Male attractiveness is so complicated. It's one of the reasons it's really difficult to capture within a dating app because photos just don't really do it justice. But too many men fall into these traps that help distinguish between an attractive man and an unattractive man. My name's Andrew Wilkinson, and I'm going to break down for you 12 qualities of the unattractive man. Firstly, neediness. This one is huge in the absolutely amazing book, Models by Mark Manson. He highlights it up, and neediness is just that internal monologue that I'm not good enough, I'm not going to meet my needs and you need to meet them for me. It is a terrible aspect in a man that he's just clingy and he always needs her around to feed his emotions because he cannot meet his needs himself. And what this leads to is him being controlling and manipulative. It's like, oh no, don't go out tonight, stay in with me, and because I want you there, but I'm kind of too afraid to admit that I want you there, so I'm going to kind of manipulate you. Neediness is such an unattractive trait in a man. It shows he has no agency over himself, and it is always first and foremost the thing that a girl can sense. It's the nice guy trait that turns every girl off. Second one, bad hygiene. This is so basic, and I think it's one of the reasons that when I ask girls, it comes up so frequently. Because do you know what it reminds them of? If a guy has bad hygiene, it's like he's a child. What he's communicating is that he can't even look after himself, never mind anyone else. That he is so unaware of his own fucking odor, when that is just simply brushing his teeth, showering, being able to have generally good hygiene is just such a basic and such a clear signal of an unattractive man, because it shows that he's like withdrawn out of society, that he doesn't have close people around him to sort of keep him in shape. We're such social animals that if he had good people around him, they wouldn't have let him end up this way. So number 2, bad hygiene. So easily avoided. Whew. Number 3, overconsumption or even addiction to pornography. This one is getting more and more important. This is why I put it really high up on the list, because the amount of Gen Z guys that are coming through that just have an absolute addiction to pornography because they were exposed to it when they were like 12 years old, and it's hardwired into their brain, and it gives this false perception of even what a woman is, that their only relations to girls is through this like pornographic avatar that they see, and it makes them unable to connect in the real world because they don't see a real girl, and then everything is skewed. And what it also does is drain guys of any motivation, because why is there any drive to do anything when at all times you can pull out your phone and just watch some absolute like 10 out of 10 beautiful girl naked at will? Like, what is there else to do? It will drive into that chimp brain, and then you're just done. And girls know this, and it makes them feel like there's this vacuum between you, that there's nothing between you because you're already taken, you're already obsessed with the fucking fairy that is pornography, the thing that is taking all of your attention, so you can't have a real relationship with her, which likely leads to issues in the bedroom. Pornography is one of the biggest devils, and like, I'm not going to say like you should never ever watch it. What a hypocrite I would be. So I'm not going to say that I've never watched it, but knowing that that's your main way of connecting, the main way you've seen women, it's always going to be deadly for you. The best periods I've had, ones that I'm in right now, is where I don't watch porn. If I'm wanting to interact with girls in a natural fashion, it's always when I've not watched porn for like 6 months that things are just really good. So always look at this as just the thing that keeps you away from having the relationship that you truly want. Whew. Number 4, an unattractive man has a victim mentality. He blames everyone else other than him. It is not his fault. It's because whatever, like maybe his dad ran out on them when he was younger, which is terrible. But if he carries that through into his 30s, as much as it's this devastating, terrible thing, well, simply put, it doesn't help you. if you, whatever you blame, you give power to, and that dictates the rest of your life. Every single person I know has had something in their life that is a reasonable justification for why they should be a victim and why life is cruel and unfair. But the difference between the two groups are the ones that decide to actually, no, screw this, I'm going to live the life that I want to have, despite all of this nonsense that happened to me. Like, for me, I grew up and I was really badly bullied. I didn't hit puberty till I was like nearly 18. I was like 17. My body was just like, nah, we're just not really going to give you that one. And it was awful. Like, I was super short. I looked like I was maybe 12 years old when I was 17. And I was horrendously bullied for it and had awful self-esteem and all these things. And that could just easily have been my life. Like, quite fair enough, whatever. That could have been it. But I just decided not to be a victim to it all. Because all you get is that, like, minor bit of credit in the moment of, like, I'm going to cash in my victim tokens. But over the long term, you just fall apart because you have no agency, you have no faith in yourself, you never get what you want. And girls can sense this, and they don't want a guy that just blames the world. They want a guy that takes responsibility and is willing to do something about it. Because you just come across weak, I'm not going to lie. As soon as you start blaming the world, you just seem weak. Number 5, a lack of self-awareness. You see this in guys where it's just like, they're just so easily, like, they're triggered. They don't know when they're being rude, and people are just able to play with them because they don't know anything about themselves. They're not able to actually reflect on their behavior. They have no self-awareness. They're so just repeating their same mistakes over and over because they can't seem to look at who they really are. They almost have this blind spot to themselves. They can't communicate properly of being assertive of, like, oh, this is who I am. It's the guy that's super loud and super boisterous and talks over everybody. But then if someone else speaks a bit too much, they seem to accuse them. They can see the flaw in someone else, but they can't see it in themselves. And it's this really unattractive trait that you're communicating, that you just can't see yourself for who you really are. And then that means when someone tries to connect with you, it feels disjointed because it doesn't feel like they're connecting with a real person. The person that you see yourself as, they're two different things, so there's no connection there. Having a level of self-awareness is attractive because it allows you to have flaws and just recognize them. People hate it when people have these, like, glaring flaws that they refuse to admit to. But as soon as you're, like, quite open of just like, yeah, I have these flaws that, like, for me, I can get, like, kind of anxious and kind of fucking needy at times, but I'm aware of it, so I work on it. It's like, oh, that thing's happening to me where maybe I've not had a text back for like 6 hours and I'm wondering what's going on and all these things. I'm feeling this happening live as it's going. I'm going to go for a run because I know that helps me. And that's the attractive thing. And I communicate that with all of my partners. I've just been like, yeah, I just have a thing that I can occasionally have that bit of like an anxious attachment style. But the way that I process it is that I really like running, or I really like sort of chatting to my friends. We're not meant to be perfect. We are all flawed. And the way that we get around that is through self-awareness, because people are super forgiving when you're willing to acknowledge what your flaws are and work on them. Number 6, buried in shame. This one is bad for guys. That it could be even related to the pornography thing of just like, they are constantly addicted to porn. They won't tell anyone they're watching it, and they're just internalizing this shame. I speak so much about shame being the most deadly emotion for men out there, and it absolutely is, because it's the only one which the intense sensation of the emotion doesn't cause its release. Okay? So if you're really sad, it leads you to crying. If you're really happy, it leads you to smiling and releasing the temptation or laughing. If you're really angry, you might scream. But if you're feeling really ashamed, all that makes you want to do is hide even more, which actually increases the shame, which makes you want to hide even more. And it creates this feedback loop until you're buried and you can't communicate with anyone. There'll be things that you're ashamed of about yourself. There are plenty of things that guys get buried deep within their sort of like subconscious, and they tell themselves, oh, I can't tell anyone about this. Like the amount of guys that have like an insecurity around maybe their penis size, whatever it is. That's like the biggest male physical insecurity is that. And guys get really ashamed of that. Or maybe they're still a virgin. Or all these different things that they have this shame over. And all it does is cause them to feel not good enough and also not connect, that they'll hide away because they will be terrified of being vulnerable with someone, because if they could see them for who they truly are, then they believe that that person would run away, they would humiliate them, they would bully them, they would make jokes at all of their flaws, so they hide them. And also, that usually means they hide themselves. They withdraw from society because they have too much shame. And this makes a really unattractive man, because once again, there's no ability to connect with him. He won't face his demons, his dragons. He's buried in too much shame. He's not brave enough to look at himself and express himself for who he truly is. Okay, number 7, he can't communicate. He's too shy. I've seen this so many times where girls kind of being introduced to a guy, that maybe being set up by friends, and when it comes down to it, they sit down together and the guy is just stuck in his head. He cannot communicate at all with her. He's just like, shit, what do I say? Oh, fuck. And he just goes internally. And the issue is, women kind of fall in love with what you say and how you communicate and how you express yourself. And if you're a guy that can't do that, you always end up losing to the guy that probably is not as good a match for her, but he was at least loud enough that he went over and he spoke to her. That is the flaw of the shy guy, because it's all well and good being introverted. I'm quite introverted myself. But if you can't communicate and speak when it's necessary, when you need to, then you'll always lose out on the girl and you'll seem unattractive because you can't express who you are. Women fall in love with who you are, and the best way that we can communicate that is through stories about ourselves, through actual dialogue and conversation. And if you can't do that, you'll always feel unattractive because they'll think you're holding back on them. They'll think there's something suspicious about you because you're just not speaking, or they'll think you're hella needy because you're so insecure you don't dare say anything to them. It's always an unattractive trait. Learning to communicate is vital. Oh, number 8. That is bad friends or no friends. So, men, simply put, are judged on their quality of network. Is a huge part of it. It's like, what is your tribe? What are the people that represent you, your closest friends? There's the common saying that you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So girls look at it. Genuinely, I've spoken to girls about this. They're very curious to who your close friends are because it tells them a story about who you are. And if they're all loser waste men, what does that say about you? Because men tend to group together based on competence and ability. And it doesn't have to be like of the same thing. You don't all have to be perfect footballers or whatever, but men of similar sort of like status just tend to group together. So if all your friends are losers, she's going to be like, oh, fuck. He's actually a loser, isn't he? Oh, fuck. I really like this one. And it's turned out he's a waste man. And that's the difficulty for guys. So that's that's bad friends. But there's also no friends, which is also a really common problem for guys because they struggle to maintain networks as well as girls do. And like they'll go through school having some friends, but then as soon as they leave, they drift away. And because guys don't maintain those friendships, they end up lonely, isolated. And then in those situations, that's a terrifying partner for a girl because he will put all of his eggs in that basket of just like, his girlfriend is everything to him. He is her, like, she is his best friend, his football watching buddy, his like confidant. She's everything. And that's too much pressure. You need to have this network to fall back on and to rely on. So you're not just solely reliant on her. Having no friends or bad friends is a clear signal of an unattractive guy. There's another line that, show me your friends and I'll tell you your future. And that is what a clear indication of what friendships are and networks are as a representation of a male's attractiveness. Number 9, and that is an inability to regulate his emotions. Once again, a guy that is prone to anger, crying, he's unstable, he's always volatile. Girls don't like this. They don't want to be around someone, mainly because it's kind of dangerous. If this guy cannot keep his emotions in check, then she doesn't want to have herself, who is vulnerable, and even potential other offspring that would also be vulnerable around this guy. If they feel like he's so easily triggered, that doesn't make a girl feel safe around you. That she knows that life has its tests, it has its ups and downs, and if every single time that your relationship gets tested, you're just like fly off the handle, then that's always unattractive. Even if she quite likes you, she'll just have the warning signs that go off in her head that he can't be trusted. This guy isn't a real masculine man. And that isn't that you have to bottle up all of your emotions, that you never express them to anyone because you're Mr. Stoic. No, because that is basically just a build-up of shame because you're then ashamed of your emotions. Instead, the attractive man is the one that's able to express his emotions in a controlled manner, who still expresses them, but he isn't just like this exposed nerve of volatility that's just going from one extent to the other, because that's exhausting and it's dangerous to be around. An attractive man is able to regulate his emotions. Number 10, laziness. A man who is lazy has no drive, he has no motivation. And that's a particular problem for a guy, because a lot of his happiness is derived from the pursuit of a goal. Fundamentally, what keeps guys going, what really drives you on, is that pursuit of a goal. But if you're lazy, then you'll never get that happiness. And if you never get that, it creates these men that are devoid of a soul, of energy. They just feel vapid, that all they do is a job that they hate. They come back and play video games. And she looks at him, and girls just want to feel. They want to feel connected. And if this guy is just withdrawn and soulless because he's just not got any motivation, he's lazy, which causes this spiral that you feel lazy, so you act like a lazy guy, you have a terrible diet, awful sleeping pattern, which makes you more lazy. It steals away the essence of meaning from your life, which is actually going on pursuits to try and get the goal, trying to find that healthy motivation of pursuing something important, because that's what girls find attractive. They love a guy with drive. They want to see that you are an investment for them. They pick you based on where they see your future going. And if you're super lazy, she's just like, oh, cool, so it's this for the next 40 years. He comes home, cracks open a beer, and just watches the fucking Serie B fixtures on repeat. And it's just like, she doesn't want a part of that. It doesn't mean you can't have time for yourself, you can't relax. It just means that if you're an unmotivated guy, you just lack life energy. Number 11, he values everyone else's opinion above his own. If he constantly changes himself in order to get the validation of others, this is unattractive. He changes his opinions. He never says where he wants to go. It's like, oh, I'd kind of like to do this, but I'm going to find out what John says first, because I want John to like me, and if I say this, maybe he'll disagree, so I'm going to stay quiet. Oh, cool, you want to go to barbecue? Yeah, okay, we'll do that. It's loser, it's weak, it's communicating that you don't feel good enough about yourself, that everyone else is more important than you, and you, simply put, will always be perceived as unattractive. Because a man needs to be able to stand up for what he wants and see himself as an attractive dude. Because you are the person that knows yourself best out of anyone in the world. And if you can't see the good in yourself, why should anyone else? You're the one that spent the most time, and she will look at that. When she goes up to a guy, the reason that girls like confidence is because it's meant to be an accurate reflection of a guy's like competence and ability. How he feels about himself is vital, because you're the one that's supposed to know yourself the best. Why would a girl be like, okay, this guy seems to think he's a loser, and he spends 24 hours a day with him. I've only seen him for like half an hour. I'm going to trust his opinion more. He thinks I'm out. And that's the issue. If you think you're a loser, everyone else will as well. And this doesn't mean you need to live in some fantasy like, I'm just like Mike Tyson, bro, let's go. It's just being able to be a guy that is able to value his opinion of himself above everyone else's opinion of him. Number 12, final one. He is still a child. So the biggest fear I think a girl can have when she's trying to find a partner is falling into the trap where she needs to be that naggy mother to a 40-year-old, 12-year-old, because she knows that in the future, should you have a family, she's going to have all these other people that are dependent on her. And then now when she looks to you for strength, you're just the same. If you're the guy that promises her that you're going to do stuff, then you don't do it. And then you just act like a child. You can't take care of yourself. You need her to do everything for you. It's embarrassing and it turns her off so much because no healthy woman wants to sleep with her child, right? Think about that. If you act like her child, her attraction for you will tank because ideally, in any sense, she's not going to want to sleep with you for that. And this is what happens because it turns out men even have a proclivity to doing this. There's a bit built into us that when we're in a relationship with a girl, we kind of want it in a certain fashion to turn her into mother. It can be a whole thing of psychological fuckery where it's just like you're trying to repair a relationship that you once had with your own mother, and all these kind of things get involved. But the bottom line is, to be the child is one of the most unattractive traits that a man can have, and it is one that we need to avoid. And that doesn't mean you can't rely on her for anything. It just means having a healthy balance of where you're a team and it isn't just her carrying you around. So that is my list of 12 qualities of the unattractive man. Comment below which one of them you think is the worst. And what I'd also love to see is put in your own. What do you believe is the most unattractive quality that guys can exhibit? And I'm going to go through the comments and I'm going to pick out which one that I think is like my favorite and the biggest trigger problem. And I will make an entire video based on that problem of why it's a problem and what people can do about it. And I will give a shout out to whoever comments below. So I cannot wait to see what you put below. And I will catch you on the next video.